Hello everyone, I'm Arnoldo, and today I'm going to teach you how to use the JUnit library in Eclipse in order to write unit tests for Java code. I will be using the Eclipse IDE, um, and I guess before I get started, in order to even run JUnit, so JUnit, for those of you that don't know, is a library that you use to um, write JUnit tests and see it a lot better and more clear, I would say. Um, so, I mean, before you even get started, you have to make sure that you are using that library. And in order to even do that, you have to go to your project, you have to right click, and you have to go down to build path and then configure build path. You go to the libraries and you can add a library. There's different ways of doing it, but this is probably the easiest way to do it. Just go to JUnit library, go to next, and you do want the newest JUnit library, finish, and as you can see here, it's been added. We apply this and we say okay. I had issues here, and that was why, because I didn't recognize these tags here. So the first thing I'm going to go over is test. What test does is it allows you to write tests without having to extend from the test case class. And all you have to do then is import have the JUnit library. So tests is a tag you have to put on methods so that you can see, or so you can tell the compiler that this is in fact a test, and so that it treats it as a test. So just so you can see what I mean, I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to go ahead and run as JUnit test. And because it has a test tag, it allows me to run it as a test. So that's the test tag. Now the next thing is before and after. And really all they are is setup and teardown for every single test. And just like you see here, they run before and after every test case. And here I'm just showing you an example, but like a good thing or a good example that I could think of is you may want to set a variable to something or initialize some object, or I mean, it could be anything, and like that's the before and the after you could use to, if you're using a scanner, you may want to close it before you're done with it. That's what after could be, but keep in mind it runs before and after every single test. So it has this before tag, this will run, then this test will run, then I will have the after run. And there is one more thing, and I'll show you all of them together here pretty soon. That is before class and after class, and that's a setup and teardown, but a one-time thing that will run every single time. So, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That will run every single time you run a test, but it only runs once per class. That's why it's before class and after class. As you can see here, I only have this before class with the before class tag, and I have this after class with the after class tag, and they're the exact same thing as before and after, except for you only run these once per class, and before and after you run once per test. So just to give you a perspective of this, I'm gonna go ahead and run this whole test, and I have a print sys out print in before class, before, and every single test method, and I also have that in the after and after class. And just so you can see, I run the this is before class once, and then I run this is before, and then I run the first test, this is after, this is before, and then I run the second test. And so as you can see, I run this is before 4 times because I have 4 tests, and I run the this is after 4 times because I have 4 tests, and I run the this is before class and this is after class only once because I only ran this test once. And So that's, I guess, the before class and after class could be useful if you are wanting to um, do something before the whole class starts. That could be also starting or initializing a variable, or I mean, and you just, I'm sure you'll probably find it useful. I know I did, but I didn't know it existed, and I had to get around it otherwise. But now I use before class and after class. And the last thing is add test and an expected exception type class. And to show you this, I'm also going to show you another thing, which is how to easily create a test. I think the easiest way to do it is you go to whatever packet you're wanting to work in, and you go ahead and right click and say new. And instead of doing the creating a new class, you go ahead and create a JUnit test case, and that will automatically import the library for you if you have not yet imported it, and it will kind of create a template for you. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and I'm just going to call this I don't know, exception test. Okay, so exception test, I created a new test, and now I want to show you this add test expected exception type class. And just real quick, we're gonna go ahead and do expected equals, and should I do null pointer exception? Array out of bounds. Null pointer exception dot class, I believe. Okay, and if I throw a null pointer exception, this should pass. And just for fun, we're gonna go ahead and do this. I'm just going to throw a new null pointer exception, and I'm just gonna write a message. This is a test, and if I run this and I do throw this null pointer exception, this should pass. And this you can find useful if you're trying to test for some sort of exception in your stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and run as JUnit test. It passes. But now let's just comment this out so you can see that this does work. And I'm just going to go ahead and say whatever system.out print. Okay, and how about we do the generic hello world. Okay, so if I run this, it's actually expecting a null pointer exception. So according to me and the library, it should fail. So how about we try it and see if I am in fact wrong. And I am right. Actually, this is working as expected. It's expecting a null pointer exception. It's not getting it, so it's failing. And this you can find useful if you're trying to test for any kind of exception. There's one more thing I'd like to go over, and that is different useful asserts. So the first one I'm going to go over is assert true and assert false, and I will just go ahead and show you in the code, but it basically just ensures that the conditions are either true or false. So as you can see here, I have an assert true and an assert false, and I don't know why this says helly, but if I have hell, that is an odd numbered word. So this is even should then return true because it's, or sorry, an even numbered word. So it should return true because it is even, and this should return false because it is not even or odd, and that's why I have assert true or assert false. So if I run this, this should pass according to what I'm testing for, if my function is written correctly. So I will go ahead and run this, and it passes. And just so that you can see, actually this is something you may want to do every time you write a test. Make sure well, okay, so I'm doing it here, but sometimes I like to just make it fail while I'm doing it so that it was no fluke. Okay, so we'll run it. And it fails, and that's what I wanted to do. And actually, you can't really see this very well, but it ran one, but I had 0 errors, and this one failed. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and fix this. And that's assert true and assert false. The next thing is assert null and assert not null. And all this does is it checks a variable and it ensures that it is in fact null or it's not null. So I have an example here in test null objects. I created a null array. And so it's obviously null because it's a null array. And so I check that and make sure that it is in fact null. So if I run this null array, and this should assert that it is null. And if I run a normal array, it's just an empty array of size 20. It should not be null according to what I think. So I'm going to go ahead and run this real quick, and it passes. So we're good. And just so that we can see that this works, I always like to do this. I don't know. You may always want to test what you worked on. It fails, so that means this library in fact does what you think it does. So that is assert null and assert equals. This may be the one you use the most because you may want to compare a variable with something that a function does, or you may want to compare two things and you may expect them to be equal. But you can actually accomplish this with assert equals or assert true or false. And I'll just show you an example here. So here I'm testing and making sure that these words are longer than I expect. So I have hello world and then unkeyboardinated. So according to me, a long word is bigger than size 7. So I guess, let me think about this. It does not, okay, so yeah. Here I'm testing and making sure that I'm using an assert equal, like I said here. And I'm just checking that the limit length is in fact 7 and it didn't change anywhere. And I'm using another assert equals and checking for two strings and making sure that they are in fact equal. And here I'm using assert true and assert false. But again, this could be accomplished in different ways. I'm just going to show you here. I have assert equals actual versus expected, and this could be a function. It could be really anything that returns another string, and I expect it to be equal to the expected, to the actual word. So if I run this, I'm going to go ahead and run it. Oh, okay. So I made a mistake. Run this test. It passes because the limit length is 7. Hello is equal to hello actual versus expected, and I have these passing as well. So that's assert equals. So that is the JUnit library that you can use for unit testing in Java. I will leave a link below for kind of a guide, and this is not it. This is not all of it. It's actually a pretty complex library, but I will leave a link below that will help you, and you can also use Google to see the API if you'd like, and you'd like to try to use some more complex stuff.